Okay, so first things first, what we need to do is we need to open up a new HTML file. Well, we need to create that HTML file, then open it up in our text editor, and then we can start writing some HTML. So let's go ahead and, if you're on Mac, open Terminal. If you're on Windows, obviously you'll be opening Git Bash. You might need to go to your search bar in the bottom, or go and find it in the Start menu when you're on Windows. I'm on a Mac, so what I'll be doing is I'll use Command and Space to bring up the Spotlight search, and then I will go to Terminal, hit Enter, and it's opened on my second screen, but let me just bring that over. Cool, and we have the terminal open. So if you followed the process in the introduction to the terminal lesson, you will have a dev folder started already. If not, go and have a review of that lesson, because we'll be using some of the stuff that we did in that lesson. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change directory, cd, and then space. And of course, Git Bash users, you can use exactly the same commands as I'm using. Your interface might just look a little bit different, but all of the commands are exactly the same. So I'm going to cd and then space, change directory into my dev folder. And you can see that we are now in dev. And then I'm going to just ls to see what's in here. Oh, I've got an instructor folder. You should just have a classwork folder. Don't worry about the instructor folder at all. That's just for me. So I'm going to change directory again into class. And also something that's quite good here is if you just start typing CL, for example, because the two letters of this, and then hit tab, it'll actually autocomplete this for you, which is very handy, especially if you've got long folder or file names. And then just hit enter. And now we are in our classwork. Let's just ls again. Okay, mine is empty. Yours might have one in it from the past lesson, but don't worry too much about that. So we're going to go and create a folder or a directory for this lesson, and then put a HTML file inside it. Now, if you remember from the intro to the terminal lesson, we make a directory with mkdir, mkdir as I call it, and then space, and then think of the name for the directory. So for this one, we're going to put intro-2-html. So yeah, mkdir space intro-2-html. Going to hit enter. Looks like nothing happened. Brilliant. Means it all went well. And let's just ls to make sure that that was created. Fantastic. Intro to HTML is now inside the classwork folder. So let's go ahead and cd into the intro. And again, I'm just going to start typing the name of the folder and hit tab so that we get into the intro.html folder. And then, if you can remember how we make files on the command line, yep, it's touch. Yep, so we go touch, and then think of the name for our file. So I'm going to say index.html. Hit enter, and just ls again, and we've got our index.html file created. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to open up this folder, this directory in VS Code. Now, if you followed the setting up your text editor lesson properly, this will work. There may be some permission issues on your computer. So if this doesn't work properly, I've put a link to another video in the and some text in the text description with this video. So go and check it out there. So what we're going to do is we're going to say code, and this will go ahead and open VS Code for us. But we need to tell it what to open. So if you remember back to the Intro to Terminal lesson, the way that we can reference the folder that we're currently in is we can use the dot or the full stop or the period mark if you're using American English. So we write the word code, add a space, and then hit dot. I will use the word dot because that's the least syllables and is the easiest to say. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. Now you'll see that this has opened VS Code. If you have, I'm just going to move this out of the way so that I can reference this. So if you've got an error that comes up here, it'll say something like code not in path. Go and check out that second video. Pause this one here, go and have a look at that video, and it'll give you some pointers as to how to fix that permanently. I could go through it now to give you a quick fix, but you're better off fixing that permanently and understanding why that's happening. So if all went well, and you've just come back to this video, if all went well, you should now have open in front of you the VS Code window with a panel on the left that says index.html. So if we click that, it'll open up our index.html. Of course, nothing's in it. It's a completely empty file at the moment. Let me just make this full screen, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit just so that you can see it better. And I'm just going to get rid of that. You feel free to have it open. So in here, we can start writing HTML code. So the structure of our web pages, we can start writing that. Now, there's some code that is always going to be needed in a HTML file, and we call this boilerplate code. Now, we could go ahead and start writing this ourselves. We could open up a tag and we could say exclamation mark doc type HTML, and then close that, and then we could go down and start writing our, okay, well, we need to open our, okay, this is going to get boring, guys. Right. Developers, a good developer is a lazy developer. So what we can use is something called Emmet abbreviation. And good old Emmet will help us write our boilerplate code for us. So how do we ask Emmet abbreviation to do that for us? Well, what we use is an exclamation mark. So if you just write an exclamation mark, and that's with Shift and 1 on my keyboard, if you're using American English, you might call this a bang. So we add that exclamation mark, and you'll see it brings up this little window here and says, hey, Emmet abbreviation, this is what I'm going to insert for you. So if you've not clicked anything or pressed anything else, if you just hit enter or return here, you will now get our HTML boilerplate code. And like I was starting to write before, we've got the doc type HTML. We'll go into all of these, and then we've got our HTML, close HTML, head, body. Brilliant. It's kind of done part of our work for us. And it just took 2 button presses instead of having to type all of this out on its own. Brilliant. I like that sort of thing. Cool. So let's go through what all of these mean. So this first one here, don't worry too much about it here. This is basically just telling the browser that we're using the latest version of HTML. We're using HTML version 5. And in fact, if you mouse over some of these, if I try and get that to... yeah. So here, if you see when we mouse over some of the tags, it'll actually give you a little bit of a description as to what that actually is for. So I would recommend that when you do use something that you've not used before, so for example, the HTML or the doc type or head or whatever, that you do just give it a quick mouse over just to see what the description of that tag is. But let's go through these one by one. Okay, so the doc type HTML, that tells our browser we're using the latest version of HTML, HTML5. Now, every HTML document has to have an opening HTML tag. And what do I mean by tags? Well, these are all tags. The head tag, the HTML tag. Inside the head tag here, now the head tag is basically just stuff that the browser uses but the user cannot see. It's kind of invisible, but it's stuff that we can give to the browser. And we'll actually get a little bit more into this when we look at using JavaScript and CSS. So inside here, you can see that we've got metadata that the browser will use, for example, the width of the viewport and the scaling of the size of the screen, and what sort of characters we're using. We're using a standard called UTF-8 here. Don't worry if that doesn't mean too much to you now. What I want you to take away from this is that inside the head tags, you have all of the metadata that the browser uses, but the user can't see. And we've also got a title here. Now this will actually appear in our little tabs at the top of our browser window. Every HTML document has a body. If the HTML document has user viewable content, we'll have a body, set of body tags. And in here, we can put, for example, other tags. So I'm going to say H1 in here, and I'll say my super cool website. Oh, no, that's a badly spelt word. My dyslexia coming out there. So my super cool website inside the body. Now this is viewable to the users. Now notice that almost every opening tag, like this H1 here, or this body here, or the head, and even the HTML, has got a corresponding closing tag. Now, the way that we do these closing tags is it looks just like the opening tag, but we add a / just before the name of the tag. So we've opened our H1 here and closed our H1 here. Be careful as well when you're writing these tags. You need to use the correct angle brackets here. So these are just down to the bottom right of my keyboard, and they probably will be the same on every keyboard, but just go and have a look for them if you can't find them. So inside our body here, we've got this H1 of my super cool website. How do we see that? It's all very well and good that we've got our HTML, but let's actually see it in our browser. Well, what we're going to use here for the rest of this unit is something called Live Server. Now, this is a plugin that we can use in VS Code. Don't worry too much about how it works, but if we just go ahead and click on the extensions icon here on the left-hand side, so just give that a click, it will come up with this sidebar here. And what I want you to type in the search box at the top here is live space server. Now, there are a few different ones that you can use. However, the one that I'm going to use in this, and I would encourage you to use the same one as I am, is this Live Server plugin by Ritwick Day. So if you go ahead and click on that, we'll now bring up this extension window here. Now, mine's already enabled, but I'm just going to disable it to show what you might need to do. So you can click install, and then it should enable it for you, but if not, you can go ahead and click enable, and this extension is enabled globally. It may come up with a box in the bottom saying you need to restart. That's fine. Go ahead and restart the restart VS Code. But then we'll have on our computers a little server that will look at our index.html file and then put it in the browser for us. Okay, so once that's all set up, feel free to pause the video if it's taking a while. But I'm going to go ahead and close this window here. Now, if we go back to this icon here, the Explorer, and click that, you'll see that we've got our index.html file here. Now, something just to bear in mind, and it's very, very handy in VS Code. If we look up here, you'll see that it's got a little circle just after the file name on this file tab here? Well, this circle is telling us that the file is unsaved. It's not been saved yet. So if I come into this file, make sure that my cursor's in here, I'm going to do Command S. Now this just saves the file. Now on a Windows, you can use Control S. You could also go up to File and then Save. However, we're developers, use our keyboard shortcuts and get into the habit of using Command S or Control S whenever you make changes. You know, it kind of, your hand will become a bit like a claw from constantly doing Command S if you're doing it enough. So now we've saved our file. What we can do is we can come over here to the index.html, right click on it. Now this is a bit small, I can't make this any bigger unfortunately, but one of the options will be Open with Live Server. And you'll see down at the bottom we had starting for a moment, and then it says port 5500 or 5500. And what this will do is it will open a browser window for you. Mine's opened on my second screen, but I will just bring this across. Fantastic, we've got our website. Now, this is the address of our website. This exists only on our computer. This doesn't exist anywhere else. This is what's called a loopback address. And we'll go into these a little bit more when we look at full stack engineering. But great, we've now got a website that we can have a look at. You know, we can edit the HTML and we can see it in the browser. What I'm going to do is, just because I'm working on one screen, if you're working on two screens, you can have these kind of side by side. But I'm just going to bring my browser window in like this, click over to VS Code, and I'm going to bring this side in like this. Now, what this means is I can quickly just click between windows. Of course, you can use, I think it's Command and Tab on Mac to quickly switch, or I think it's Control and Tab on Windows, but I will put a note just in case it isn't, to switch between them. But I quite like this method because I can just quickly click between the two windows. Okay then, so let's have a look at some other tags that we can use. So we've got H1s, which are our most important headings. Well, we can now go down the numbers to make slightly less important headings. So let's now put a subheading with a H2. Just close this, and you see VS Code's being nice and helpful here. So I'm going to say, welcome, have a look around. And then Command S again to save that. Come over. Fantastic, we've got slightly less prominent heading. These headings, we've got H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, and H6. We have no more types of heading. If somebody says they're using a H7, they're lying. They just don't exist. But that's fine. We've got our two headings here. In reality, you rarely use H5 and H6. Normally 3 or 4 is enough, but you have got them there if you want to use them. Well, what about our website content, kind of the rest of it? It's not a heading, it's just content in our website. Well, for that, we've got P tags, and this stands for paragraph. So again, make sure that we've opened our tags correctly. And inside these P tags, we will say, here's our super important content. Fantastic. So Command S again to save. Let's go and have a look. Fantastic. We've got, here's our super important content. Wonderful. So you see, I'm getting into this habit of writing a bit of code, saving it, and then checking that the result is exactly what we expected. Great, so let's have a look at another tag. And this one's a little bit more complicated. So let's put an image on our website or our web page. So the way that we do this is we do it with an image tag, or an img tag, I've heard some people call it. So let's open an angle bracket, and we'll say img, and then close it. Now you'll notice that it did not give us a corresponding closing tag. And that's because image tags are what's called self-closing. We do not need to do this. Ooh, you see that it's trying to kind of second guess what I'm doing. So I'm going to say image here. We do not need to do this. This is completely pointless. Image tags are self-closing. You'll see that we've actually already seen a self-closing tag with this meta up here. Okay, so let's have a look at our image. Now, we need to add something called an attribute. And one of the most important attributes for the image tag is the source, or basically just telling it where the image is. Now, this could be a file on our computer, or it could be somewhere on the internet. We're going to look at somewhere on the internet before we look at files on our computer. So we'll say that the source of this image, or the src, equals, and you'll see that VS Code is being helpful. I'm putting in these double quotes here. Now you'll notice that I've written this src inside the image tag. It is inside and before this angle bracket here. We do have a space between them, otherwise it gets a bit confused and thinks that the image source is the tag name. So make sure that you have a space there. So inside these, we need to put the path to an image of some sort. So I'm going to go to my Chrome browser, just open up another tab, and let's just search for an image somewhere. So I'm going to say HTML logo. And that's me. I'm just Googling for an image. Let's click on this here and make sure that you go over to the right-hand panel and right-click on this image. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say copy image address. Copy image address. And that's just copied the location of that image to the clipboard. So when I go back to VS Code here, between these double quotes, I'm just going to use Command V or Control V and make sure that it's inside those src quotes that we put in. Okay, so let's go ahead and save with Control S or Command S and head back over to our website. Fantastic, we've now got that image showing up on our webpage. Excellent work. Just something to bear in mind here is that as developers, we need to constantly be thinking, what if something goes wrong? What if something is not as we expect it? Well, in our image tag here, we can add what's called an alt attribute. We use alt equals, and then again, double quotes. And we can give a description of what this image is. So we'll say that it's the HTML logo. Now, why is this important? Well, it comes down to accessibility. So a lot of people use the internet very differently. So there are people out there that use the internet, but they're blind or visually impaired. So they will use screen readers that will read the content of the website to them. Now, screen readers can't actually see the images, but what they can see is this alt text here. And this will tell the user, well, it's the HTML logo that they're supposed to be viewing. So if we just save this and go back, you'll see that nothing's actually changed on our website to us visually. But if you were to look at this, or you were to be using our website using a screen reader, the screen reader would tell the user that this is the HTML5 logo. So it's really important to do that. It's also important as well because search engines, they don't know what the image is either. So it's important that when Google comes to crawl your site to kind of categorize it and so that you show up in the Google search results, that you tell Google what this image actually is and how it relates to your website. So let's go back here. There's a third reason that alt tags are really handy as well. Let's just say that for some reason, this image moves. It moves somewhere else, or it no longer exists at this address. And we can simulate this by kind of making a mistake in our URL here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight a little bit of the text and delete it. And what this does is it basically makes a broken link. So if we go to Command S or Control S again to save and go back to our website, you'll see that it cannot find the logo. We've got this broken image icon here, but at least it does actually tell the user, well, it's the HTML logo that's supposed to go here. So that's a nice little thing that we can do for our users as well. So I'm just going to do Command Z or Control Z to undo this, and you'll see that it's put that, that text back. Command S, and brilliant. We've got our HTML5 logo there. So just a quick recap. What we've done is we've got our doc type, which is HTML5, tells our browser what type of HTML we're using. We open every document with a HTML tag, and we close that again. We've got our head tag, which is all of the stuff that we cannot see but the browser uses. And then we have our body, which is our visible content that sits in our web page. We've looked at H tags, which are heading tags, and we can go all the way from H1 to H6. Paragraphs or P tags, and we've also looked at images and attributes that we can add to image tags.